Welcome back to the Inside the Industry Podcast Season 4, Episode 8, your ultimate guide to the inner workings of the pharmaceutical industry. Get ready for exclusive interviews, insider tips, and expert analyses from the leading minds shaping the industry. We're here to answer any of your questions, so please don't hesitate to comment below, hit that subscribe button, turn off post notifications, and reshare our content. Also, stay tuned for our new consulting business that'll be catered to our pre-pharm and pharmacy students that are interested in landing an internship. Welcome back to the Inside the Industry. My name is Ravi, and I'm joined alongside Liam, and we are second-year pharmacy students at the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. Today, we have Jackie Tan, a fourth-year pharmacy student at UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. Jackie graduated from the University of Minnesota, majoring in biochemistry in 2020, and had an internship with Genentech working in the clinical safety department. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you both for having me. I feel great to be on this, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity.
Yeah, excited to get into a little bit more of your background. So just to give a general idea for our audience, could you describe your journey through starting wherever you'd like to, but what has brought you to being where you are today? What are some of the things that you've gone through?
Sure, definitely. So I, like Ravi had mentioned in the introduction, I did my undergrad in majored in biochemistry, and when I was taking my biochemistry classes in undergrad, it was interesting to me because I really liked seeing like pathways and like metabolism, and I thought a lot about medicine and how it can interact in the body. And so that's what made me decide to pursue pharmacy. And so going into pharmacy school, I originally wanted to do a clinical residency. But, you know, as a PY1, you don't know about all the options that are out there. And so last summer, I got an internship with Genentech because I had a little bit of interest in wanting to do industry. And I got a position working in their clinical safety department, which is pharmacovigilance. And I fell in love with it. I really liked the work that I did. And now I'm in my fourth year, about to look into fellowships, and I really want to do one in pharmacovigilance.
Awesome. To talk a little bit more about pharmacovigilance, some of our listeners may not be familiar with that specific field. Could you elaborate on what that looks like in the work that you did specifically in pharmacovigilance?
Sure. And all my answers about Genentech are from my experience. And so when I was there as an intern, I really had no idea what pharmacovigilance did until about a month in. And so pharmacovigilance, there's a lot of different companies that do it slightly differently, but the gist is looking at drugs or molecules that are still in development. And then you can even have post-marketed drugs as well. But looking at side effect profile, identifying adverse events, adverse risk, and how you would manage those. And so doing that work, it's a lot on the computer where, you know, you're working with a lot of clinical trial sites who are studying the molecule, and you are identifying rates of those adverse events.
That's really interesting. So to talk a little bit more about pharmacovigilance, obviously our school is a very clinically oriented pharmacy school, and I feel that that would definitely play a role. How would you say your clinical experience assisted you in your work in pharmacovigilance?
Yeah, so our clinical background that we get at UNC is really, really good, like for clinical. And so I think a lot of those critical thinking skills, learning about different like drug interactions, disease states, I think all that plays a really good like role in pretty much anywhere in pharmacy, because you really need those critical thinking skills and thinking of everything like kind of like a puzzle, or like what's the next problem that needs to be solved, like what problem is there that exists right now. And so being able to draw from those experiences and putting on that hat and seeing through that lens can definitely help make the work go by a a lot smoother than if you've had no experience at all. Because looking at like clinical trials and everything, you're going to see a bunch of meds, you're going to see a bunch of labs, and you have to be able to decipher which ones are important. And so that's kind of where clinical experience kind of plays into pharmacovigilance.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer.
No,
Thank
definitely.
you.
That's very insightful. And kind of taking a step back, you kind of discussed how when you were in your undergrad that you really liked the more medicinal side of, the biochemistry and how drugs could manipulate, certain, cycles or reactions in the body. And when you got into pharmacy school, what clubs, organizations, activities help you further your knowledge in the industry or that side of things?
Sure. So the most obvious one I can think of is IPHO. So I did IPHO, and I never was like on the board or anything, but I enjoyed going to those meetings and hearing different people come in and talking about their perspectives in industry. Some other orgs I was involved in, I'm involved in PDC, and I think that PDC was great not only for meeting friends, but meeting friends who also have similar interests as me. I've met some brothers in PDC who are um, interested in industry, and it's been great to connect with them. Um, I was also involved in Student Senate. I was on the Alumni Ambassador Committee for a couple years, and it was also great to be able to connect with alums who are out working and have that real world experience. All those orgs have really improved, like helped me figure out some of my path.
No, definitely. And I feel like your involvement, even though some weren't necessarily directly involved with the industry, probably helped you with like public speaking, networking, and whatnot.
Definitely. And networking, I would say, everyone says, yeah, it's really important to network. And, you're like, well, duh, of course it is, but it really is.
No.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned PDC. Obviously, Jackie, that is where you and I met, and I got to hear
hmm
about your experience in pharmacovigilance before this podcast. Not just for PDC, but for any of the professional pharmacy fraternities that are available to students.
hmm
What networking impacts do you feel that that's made on you career wise so far?
So career wise, I would say that I've had, friends who've sent me like contacts to people. And I would say that's made a huge um it's changed my like career direction a little bit. Just being able to reach out to like people working in the industry and connecting with them. And so not even in PDC, but when I was at Genentech, I noticed that there were a few ESOP alums who worked there as well. And so I decided to just reach out via LinkedIn and just like cold call them pretty much. And they were really receptive to just answering questions, being able to connect with me. And so just leveraging where you are right now and like those common experiences that you might have with alums who are working in the industry, they'd love to help you.
Thank you. That's an awesome
Yeah,
answer.
that's really cool. And kind of touching on that, you talked about how you reached out to past UNC alums at Genentech, but how about finding this internship? How did you network to find Genentech, and what set, what made you, um, pick Genentech and things like that?
Sure. So to be honest, last year when I was applying, I applied to a lot of internships. I found them through LinkedIn. I just found them through like IPHO. Pretty much just like a lot of those online like sources that you are available to everyone. And so I chose Genentech partially because they were one of the few places that gave me an offer, but also because when I interviewed there, I really enjoyed the people that I talked to. They were really warm, very friendly, and I thought that they had a great culture going in. I asked some questions about their culture before, I made my decision like during the interview, and I just thought that would be a really great fit And so that's how I chose them. And I guess my timeline when I was applying, I was applying like December, but most of my heavy like months that I applied were January and February, and it was really stressful waiting to hear back from some of these places because sometimes you don't hear back, and sometimes they take a while to hear back. And so I think I applied to Genentech in February, which sounds pretty late. I didn't get an interview until April, and so that was quite a turnaround because I started my internship in May and I had to move out to San Francisco to do that.
No, definitely. And I'm sure that that's a very stressful process. And if you had any advice for students, what would it be when applying to these internships?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend, make sure you have your CV polished up like sometime fall semester, like near the end of fall semester. I think that that is going to save a ton of time, ton of headache in the future, especially when you're applying. Um, I would also say don't be afraid to reach out to professors who worked in industry before, or contacts that you know who work in industry, or even just like anyone who can just chat with you a little bit about, what you want to do in the future, because all those conversations are pretty valuable and might offer some insight in itself.
No, I totally agree. I feel like if I can gain something, it's definitely reaching out to people who've done it before me or have already established themselves in the industry.
Hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have to wait a lot during the internship process, which is definitely a common theme, and you applied a lot and you don't hear back. I wanted to ask, how do you stay motivated throughout that process to keep applying, to keep reaching out to people, and to try to find a position that fits you when so many of those positions that you may find are not offered to you?
Sure. So I would say um, resilience and grit. Um, because there's going to be points in life where, you apply to something and you keep waiting and you start to feel like maybe I might not get this. But if you just keep like having a positive attitude about it, and then not comparing yourself to other peers who might be in the same situation who or may have already gotten an internship like offer before you. Be happy for your peers. Don't treat it as a competition, but also just keeping your head up and trusting that everything will work out. Because I mean, I honestly didn't think I was going to get accepted to UNC for pharmacy school, and it worked out. And there was a lot of waiting, and I'm sure that you guys have just experienced this last year. A lot of waiting period
Yeah.
after the applications, and so you might be a nervous wreck for a week or two, but just take a deep breath, take a step back, and have some perspective on things.
Yeah, that definitely rings true. I'm sure for a lot of our listeners right now. So I'm glad that you mentioned that it really is just about that positive attitude.
Yeah, and kind of touching on that, now, you got accepted, you got into Genentech. Kind of walk me through your day-to-day at Genentech as an intern and what you found to be the most insightful traits or characteristics that you learned there.
Sure. So sorry. Um, my day-to-day at Genentech, it's going to be a lot different than what the internship will be next year. They actually don't have any interns this summer. But my experience was different just because of COVID. I was kind of hybrid. I usually did Mondays and Fridays at home. So the majority of my days, I would say there were a lot of meetings with different like people working on different projects. Sometimes I would have meetings with people who worked in other departments, which was great because the internship, they let us connect with people from other department, which was very insightful. And so just hearing from them. Um, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I mostly went into the office and they gave me a computer to work on because a lot of the data is confidential. So I got the company computer, and a lot of it really depends on the project for me. So I've had one project where I did a lot of data cleaning, data management, and so they use some proprietary softwares that they have like their clinical studies on, where I would analyze data and look at that. Sometimes I would one project I had to lead a meeting working with a CRO presenting new drug data, and that culminated in helping like write a regulatory document. So there's a lot of variability in day to day. And as an intern, I wasn't really able to, have like a super big and long project throughout the whole time. I got a bunch of, small projects here and there, a lot of readings to do to learn about pharmacovigilance, and then just some practice like documents and stuff to work on some of those, like document, like filling out specific regulatory documents and just being more familiar with everything.
No, definitely. I think that's really cool that they provided you a variety of things to do, such as practicing your public speaking, working on site-specific things, working more in the field directly with, your certain molecule. And, as you mentioned earlier, looking at like adverse effects and whatnot, and kind of looking at more on the statistical side of things. And I kind of wanted to loop back to that. When you went into your internship and you were doing that day to day, were there areas you felt that you were lacking in due to, the curriculum that we learned at school? And how did you like compensate or adjust to meet those expectations at the internship?
Yeah, definitely. So my first like month there, I was extremely lost because a lot of industry, once you guys work there, have any experience, a lot of acronyms are thrown out, like a lot of acronyms. So you might feel pretty, like you might not know anything, and it's okay because sometimes they don't expect you to know anything. And as long as you put in like a good faith effort into like learning. They gave me a textbook of about pharmacovigilance, which was very helpful. And so my boss, she gave me some chapters to read, and that helped put like everything kind of together for me. But still, there was a lot to remember, especially in terms of like those acronyms I talked about earlier. And then just talking with other people in the department because they know like where I'm at that I don't really know too much. And so they were more than willing to help me out along my way. And if I had any questions, I could always ask. And everyone was more than happy to help answer and guide me in the right direction.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Acronyms can really get to you. They get to me all the time in class. And
Mhm.
that's really cool that you're able to utilize, the professionals at the company to your advantage, right? I think a lot of students don't necessarily take advantage of, the people ahead of us. If we have questions, use them. They're a resource. And that's awesome that you're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching on that, obviously, like you mentioned, you learned so much through that internship experience that you wouldn't have learned in the classroom. If you have a takeaway or something that you learned at all from that internship, what would you feel would be like the most important thing to bring to students didactically?
I would say didactically, something important would be just basic knowledge about like the field because I honestly had no idea what pharmacovigilance was when I went in to this internship, and I wish that the didactic curriculum would introduce some more of like these industry fields, or at least just briefly talking about them in class. Because I would say that there's a lot of people nowadays, like in my class and in younger classes, that have an interest in industry. And so I think those demographics are changing a lot with how many people want to do residencies and fellowships. And so just exposing us to some more of those fields in industry like reg affairs, med affairs, pharmacovigilance, HEOR. Like, I think that it would be really great to impress upon like the younger classes that there's more to a PharmD than just, you know, working in community or working in a hospital or working like in academia.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I definitely didn't know what pharmacovigilance was before our conversation, but reading up on it after the fact, I thought it was one of the most interesting industry careers that you could look into. So something like that, I agree, should definitely be impressed upon us. Kind of a transition here into some of your work as a younger man. Uh, in undergrad, you did some research in your biochemistry department. And in that research, you saw a lot on metabolism and protein mapping, like you stated. Um, what drew you to do that research? And how did you establish a relationship with one of your professors to start working on a project like that?
Sure. So I think what really got me into doing research was I really just wanted to get involved with like the school to work on something that's just bigger than like a class project. And I've always been very science minded ever since I was in middle school. I love science classes. And so I thought that would be a great way to learn about how research is conducted. As a young undergrad, I really was interested in just getting involved more with what's going on and how it can like utilize everything I have around me to help me shape my experience there. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question, Liam?
Oh, yeah, not a problem. So, how did you specifically go about actually reaching out to a professor and finding what research projects would be best for you? Because, especially at larger universities, there's so many research projects going on.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, definitely. So I was able to get my research position because my biochemistry teacher was actually my um, like PI. And so what I did like in class, and I know these larger universities, like I went to a massive university. I think we had like 50,000 people like enrolled. And so some of my classes were like 300 people. But my biochemistry class, it was my junior year and I wanted to form better relationships with my professors. And so I just started stepping on my comfort zone and answering questions in class. And so eventually, like my biochemistry teacher, when I was answering her questions, she knew me by my first name, which was a start. And then I decided to just reach out and meet with her at office hours and just talk to her a little bit about her research. And then she mentioned that she's looking for a student for her postdoc. And the rest is history from there.
That's awesome. So, I can definitely see how valuable that experience would be as well. Besides your research in undergrad, what else did you do to prepare yourself for a pharmacy or just healthcare in general career?
Yeah. So in undergrad, I also worked at a pharmacy. I worked at Walmart Pharmacy back in Minnesota. And, you know, I really didn't know anything about pharmacy until I met my friend. I met him through a fraternity, which I never thought that meeting like a fraternity brother and, you know, him offering me a job at a pharmacy like would lead me down this career, but it did. And so um, I worked at Walmart for about 2.5 years in undergrad. And so that's kind of helped with like wanting to do pharmacy. And then also in undergrad, I was a TA for biology. And so I TA'd the lab and I was the person who like ran the lab for like 2 hours with a bunch of undergrads taking like 101, like bio 101. And um, that has really shaped like my confidence as a public speaker and in healthcare. I think it's super important to be able to speak, especially to patients too, because if you can't get through to patients, then you know it's they're not going to have the best outcomes. They might not trust you. They might not want to listen to you as much. And so I think just having that communication between like anyone, being able to communicate with them is super important in healthcare and is a skill that's kind of overlooked sometimes or is seen as a soft skill. But these soft skills are super important for, going into any career in healthcare.
No, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that public speaking thing. I think that's a really unique yet valuable perspective on the importance of communication between a healthcare provider and a patient.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what both of you said. Kind of just touched on that, right? Like if you have something that's has some kind of clinical significance, and if you cannot describe that to any other, the layperson, it means nothing, right? So I
Hmm.
truly believe that public speaking is pertinent to anyone in healthcare. And kind of going off of that, right? We're students here, we're pursuing career in industry. What did you find or you find most important to focus on as a student here for industry? Uh,
Sure. So I would say definitely taking advantage of electives that are offered. So my second year, I took the making medicines elective, and that class, people from industry came and spoke to us, and it was a really great way to just like learn more about people's roles in industry and meeting those professionals as well. Um, this past semester, third year spring, I highly recommend if you have like an interest in industry, taking Dr. John Easter's health policy elective. I thought that it was a really great elective, and it was a really like different than a lot of the other classes that I've taken at ESOP, where it was more discussion based as a class. And it was a smaller class size, but they brought in people from, Blue Cross, AMCP, to come in, speak about that side of things as well. And so um, learning more about, other areas in pharmacy and how they interact, especially like in the whole healthcare ecosystem, is really important, in my opinion. Just being able to realize, like, oh, so that's what they do, that's their role. How does my role interact with them?
no, I couldn't agree more with you. And that's something that I find very valuable as a student as well, figuring out my schedule for the next, 2 years until going onto those appies and how to take advantage of the curriculum offered at ESOP, especially for our viewers that are currently going to UNC. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, and for our listeners that aren't attending ESOP or UNC in general, please look into similar classes like Jackie mentioned, because getting those outside of the normal sphere of education experiences can really send you down a career path like that you never would have considered beforehand. To finish up with that, I know you've had a lot of great answers for current pharmacy students and students looking into pharmacy school. Just to kind of top it all off, Jackie, what is something that you would tell someone entering pharmacy school? What is something that they should consider, or what is something that they should focus on?
Sure. So I would say for someone just entering pharmacy school, it's okay to not be locked into a career path. A lot of people change their minds throughout like the 4 years at pharmacy school, and so it's really important that you focus on doing things that you like to do, because there's nothing worse than, being stuck at a job or being stuck doing an activity for a while that you don't enjoy, because that can really drain a lot of your energy. And you should really be using like a lot of your focus, a lot of like your like knowledge, to pursue something that you really want to do, to reach out to people that are in your desired careers, and just be open to learning about anything and everything, really, because some people, they might be interested in something else, and that's perfectly okay. And so just having that open mind, and if you already know what you want to do, I would say on rotations, have an open mind. I'm sure that they've told you guys this already for your first year rotations, but you never know which preceptor might write you a letter of recommendation, or you bond with, or you might see in the future. And so it's really important not to act disinterested, even if you don't like the subject matter, but just put in like one foot and try to have an open door and an open attitude to doing it.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like a lot of similar sentiments have been echoed in other episodes. So I'm glad that you reinforced that for everybody. And I'm glad that you were able to keep an open mind, like you said, and find a career like pharmacovigilance that interests you so much. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on our podcast today. I'm sure both of our pharmacy students and non-pharmacy students will get a lot of benefit from your advice. And, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Ravi, so much for having me on this podcast. This has been a great way to spend Sunday afternoon, and it was nice talking with you too.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was really awesome hearing, your career background and how you can move forward. So I'm really excited to hopefully do a follow-up episode in a year, maybe when you get your fellowship, and hear about that process as well. It's been
Definitely.
Great.
Well, you know where to reach me then.
Over 80% of you guys are not subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button, reshare our content, turn on post notifications as we roll out our consulting business and other day in the life videos. Thank you again for watching our videos, and stay tuned for more updates.